Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Art of Move with myself, Anthony Manuel, my good friend Dr. William Raybar. We are out here in the Canadian Rockies, still trying to find the grand unified theory of human movement, biomechanics, functional fitness, moving and flowing free in the physical, corporeal form, which is your human existence. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're about. And we're going to be continuing our Philosophy of Science series today, pivoting off an idea that was put forth by Karl Popper, which was that in order for a scientific model to be valid scientifically, it had to be able to be falsified. And Will was just explaining this concept to me right before we started, so forgive me if I botch this a little bit, but the example that you gave me before we started, Will, was that because God is not falsifiable, it's not within the realm of science to kind of determine what God is. And you had this really great podcast clip or an interview clip that you had queued up that sort of it was a counter argument against this proposition that something has to be falsifiable in order for it to be scientific. And I think we're going to pivot from there in terms of when we're talking about, the nature of truth and the nature of finding out things scientifically, where we're diving deep into this. So did you want to give a little bit of a context for the clip that you're about to play, and we'll kind of go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. And you were right about Karl Popper there. And he was big upon falsification. If you can't falsify it, it's not under the realm of science, right? But I wanted to find other ideas because no idea is supreme, right? These are all ideas that people agree on. Some people do, some people don't. And they are ideas that people build upon, okay? But they're not exactly set in stone. Okay, and these guys, Quinn and Duhem, made a thesis, I believe it was in the 1940s, and it was to challenge Popper. And what they're saying, basically, is that your falsification, you need to take into account that you have assumptions before that, and your observations have assumptions before that. Okay, not falsification, observations and theses. You may have assumptions you don't even know about. Okay, and I think that's happening right now all over the place in science. One, because there's no philosophical basis. When you're going through school, there's no philosophy in science. I believe the Scandinavian countries are the only ones that do this, that I know of anyway. Okay, I know that Australia doesn't. I know that Canada doesn't. I know that the States doesn't. It's not normal to have that scientific philosophy. And in my opinion, from watching a lot of metaphysicists like Michio Kaku and Neil Tyson and Brian Cox and Lawrence Krauss, basically they want to replace philosophy with metaphysics. They're like, it's over. We know more than the philosophers now, and we're asking deeper questions, so we can pretty much toss this out. But I believe they're assuming way more than they think they're assuming. Okay, and people take their word as the word, right? But I think that there's a lot of assumptions that they're making. Let's listen to Quinn and Duhem thesis, and then we can pivot off that. Okay?
Yeah.
Go.
The point is merely this, that the predictions yielded from a hypothesis never just come from the hypothesis itself. You always need additional claims, additional assumptions. And all of that taken together gives you a prediction, something that can actually be tested. Newton's law itself can't do that for you. So this leads us to the Quine-Duhem thesis. According to the Quine-Duhem thesis, we never test a hypothesis in isolation from auxiliary assumptions, or we never test it in isolation from other beliefs or commitments, etc. Rather, we always test an entire group of claims. It's a group that we're testing. And when our observational data goes against what our theory predicts, we know that our theory is an error, but we don't know exactly where the error lies. Is the problem with the core hypothesis itself, or is it with one of our other beliefs, one of our other assumptions that goes into yielding the prediction?
I'm going to stop it right there because that's already pretty interesting, right? The groups of theories or the groups of thoughts, right? Where is the actual gravy there? Where is the place that you can replace the thesis? Do you have to replace the whole thesis itself? Do you have to replace the whole model? Or can you go in and find an idea within the model itself and tweak that and keep the original model? Do you know what I mean by that? So
can you tweak one feature of something that you pre-assumed and still have your model be consistent and still have your model be correct? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but a perfect example would be, spinal engine. I'm in the last 4 or 5 episodes, I'm like, here's how you would amalgamate the theories without, completely switching the original hypothesis, right?
Mhm.
We can still have the academics have their way with, the spine is supposed to be somewhat rigid, right? They can go there, and they can still be like, oh, it's actually elastic. Now we found this out, right?
So are you asking, can you amalgamate the existing data that's built on a previous model to simultaneously prove the new model while keeping the old model's data relatively consistent and still relevant?
Exactly. So you can't just throw away model for everything. Like in this area, in this niche, there's a lot going against the original models, right? There's a lot of ideas that go against the original model, spinal engine being one of them, fascia being elastic and part of the actual force process being
Right.
another, right? So how do we amalgamate those without losing the original models? Or do we actually have to switch the original models? These are questions, right? These are...
And the other question would be, is the data and the truths and the information that people have derived from testing and doing experimentation with that old model being their first principle, is that data going to be relevant still, or are you going to have to start testing it again with the other variables of the new model down the line to sort of verify it, or even falsify the old model?
Yeah, I think you may be digging a little bit deeper at this point, which is true. What you're saying is true, but basically all I'm saying is, let's not dump the original models, or Quinn Duhem says this. Let's not dump the original models. Let's see if there's somewhere else that we can tweak the model and still keep the old model. And I think that is where science is now within our field. It's
right.
Trying to figure that out, where at the same time, our niche in biomechanics is going so far against a lot of the models, which I mentioned before, just a couple examples, that I believe it would be easier and better and more efficient to just replace them by having an audit of what is actually the models now. Let's get our first principles out there. Let's get these models out there and see exactly where you got your idea and where it came from. And we can kind of reset the whole thing, because there's not that many models out there. So in my opinion, it's to redo the whole damn thing, right?
It sounds like what they're talking about is a gradual evolution through iterations, and you're talking about like almost a revolution. So it's evolution versus revolution in terms of how you're handling data sets and models. Is that kind of accurate? Yeah.
Go back to Kuhn's original theories, where it's pre-paradigm. Everyone's trying to figure things out. And then you have normal science, which is what it has been for a long time. And then you enter a crisis. And this is the model of scientific revolution. And if you don't handle the crisis, it goes into a scientific revolution. If you do handle the crisis, you can go back to normal science, right? So the crisis being the observations don't match the models, which we could see over and over again, right? And in movement specifically. Again, this is a very, very specific niche that we have here, where I can actually look in slow motion at thousands of videos, look at the papers that are out and being like, that doesn't really match. And then I see it over and over and over and over again. And that's very unique to this field, because it's not like somebody who challenges a hormonal or a any model where you can't actually see it. So hormonal, molecular, anything along those lines, they can't really be challenged outside of the mainstream scientific institutions, because they have the lab equipment that would be able to see those things, right?
Yeah.
But the way to do it, and that is to observe to see if your model matches the models that are given through mainstream academic institutions. Okay, so basically we're at a point of crisis, I believe, and we can either do an audit, which I think we should do, an audit of the models intelligently through debate, or it's just going to split into two, really. People are going to keep doing their thing, learning off each other through courses, through the internet, and not everyone has gone to a scientific institution. Don't forget that, right? So people are allowed to use their bodies in the way that they feel like, okay? And that presents a problem if it's going against the mainstream academic models, right? Because, I mean, everything that we've seen so far, right? The ideas are challenged because they're going head to head against each other. Again, spinal engine, fascia being an easy one, right? So very interesting stuff.
So the goal that we have in these conversations is that grand unified theory. So rather than having that split, the ideal situation is, like you said, we'd lay it all out. We'd have debate. We'd get to, more consensus between one another rather than splitting off into separate factions that are just kind of like, elitists and the rebels. I think we can ascend beyond that paradigm, that duality that seems to manifest itself. It's tough to navigate. It's hard because, again, especially if you're working on different first principles, it's hard to bridge that gap. But I think it's worthwhile, right? And we are going to have some debates on here. So the crisis that you're saying has formed within the current version, the current iteration of, quote, normal science, has come about because there is a bigger propagation of information using the internet. And not only that, but there's also a bigger pool of open source visual data that people can make their own observations for. And what I find interesting is that when you're in an academic environment, they're trying to shape what your observations are going to be informed by. So they're trying to install a lens for you to look through, and that lens is the best, latest peer review. Well, I mean, in universities, it's not even the best and latest because they have to catch up with their textbooks and everything. However, they try to still instill a lens that is based on their current paradigm and their current model and their current ideas. And like you said, your experience in your university, no one ever questioned the things that they were being taught. They just assumed it was the best information. So now you almost have this like internalized gatekeeping of what you're seeing. And an academic would look at something that like a Goethe would do, and Goethe is making all these observations, and they would say, you're not actually seeing that because you don't have the understanding, you don't have the academic understanding of the mechanics, and so you think you're seeing this thing, but you're actually not. And they can actually gatekeep and say that like your observation, what you are seeing in reality, is not reality. It's a very, very strange place to be in.
Well, coming from an academic mindset, it's like, how could you have better information than me? I have the latest peer-reviewed research, but it doesn't exactly work like that. There's mechanics as well. There's scientific mechanics. And mechanics falls under science to me, right? So I can look at something and I can deduce how it would work mechanically by looking at the structures, looking at the tissues, and watching it over and over and over again, right? So a lot of those don't match the current scientific understanding. Now, I believe what's underplayed in the scientific world is the role of being social. I never hear scientists go, actually, we're very social creatures as well, and we might just be using our own social circles to reify our models. Okay, so reifying a model just means like you're drawing upon your own model to make a observation or an experiment. And it's a circle because it'll never stop because you're never bringing in new information, right? And the only new information that comes in is slowly through the academic world, and it requires consensus, which takes years. And also, it requires a long time to falsify ideas like Popper, right? Falsify ideas to get them out of the science. They would still, I think the argument would still be that it's better information 10 years from now. If I just went that way, it would be better information 10 years from now than if you just do haphazard observations and you don't know what you're looking at because you don't have the training that we have. However, I know that, with the anatomy models, it's all lever systems. Show me something that's not lever system, please, in movement. It's described in levers as you move. The force application is done through muscles concentrically and eccentrically contracting. Nowhere is there fascia and elasticity in the models of, let's say, gait, right? When your leg swings back and it comes forward, that's not really muscles, okay? Muscles are firing, but it's elastic tension that's bringing the foot or the leg back to the front, right? You're not purposely firing any muscles. Now, if I put an EMG or an ECG where they measure the electricity of the muscle, they put it on a muscle and they go, oh, look, it fired here. So that means it must be contracting and we have the correct model. However, how do you know it's not contracting to control something, right? To control the elasticity, to slow it down. Okay? To me, that's much more intuitive. It's very easy to see that that's the case, right? So Yeah, it's very interesting stuff, right? Like, I can go through a lot of the first principles that I got in, university and how I switched them and stuff like that. We can get through and do that later. But I wanted to finish the
let's
what we have.
wrap
Do you have
it up.
anything to say?
Yeah. No. Like let go ahead and play the next part, and we'll pivot off that.
Here's the stronger claim: is that a theory can always be saved from falsification by rejecting or modifying one of the auxiliary assumptions. Strict falsification is impossible. This means that Popper's view of strong falsification is a bit problematic. On his view, if you run into anomalous data, that means your theory has been refuted. But if the quantum thesis is right, that's not necessarily true. You can always keep the core hypothesis. You just need to modify your auxiliary assumptions in an appropriate manner.
So auxiliary assumptions to me is just variables that you're not accounting for, right? And like
Yes.
For an example would be the fascial, the mechanical reality of fascial tension playing a role in force production and the elasticity playing a role in force production. That is a variable that a person is not accounting for, and they're assuming isn't there. And so that would be like an auxiliary assumption. That would be one of the auxiliary assumptions that they're talking about when they're testing things, no?
Absolutely. That would be an auxiliary assumption to me anyway, right? And how would I prove it? We would have to do tests, devise experiments with that in mind, right? However, I'm not really into research. If someone wants to do this that has a PhD, go for it, right? Like that, I think that's a great way to go. But it would be hard to actually even conduct that study. First off, people would be like, what is this? Right? Because you're now socially going against a lot of the science that's already out there. So you're going to cast yourself out as an outcast right off the get-go. Okay. There's a, how do I say this? People don't actually acknowledge this in science, that there is social aspects to it where if you go against the original model, you're going to get hammered from every corner. There's going to be people coming after your thesis. You're going to have to defend it big time, right? Not only a normal defense of your thesis, but why are you going against the whole hypothesis in the first place, a core thesis, right? So I don't think that they recognize auxiliary assumptions, and it's very hard to get that into the models, right? So to stop the reification, to stop you from going in a circle, this is what we believe, so let's test it. Oh, look, the test came out this way, so we believe that. It's a circle, right? New information has to get in to become new theses, observations, tests, and ultimately paradigms. If there's enough assumptions that aren't accounted for, that's where I believe, and they start being looked at properly, spinal engine, fascia, again, right? If they start being looked at properly, it might be a paradigm. And nobody wants that because there's going to be a lot of academic embarrassment. There's going to be confusion, and trust goes down in the people who had trust before, and new scientists will rise up, which happens, during scientific revolutions, right? I think that in order to save mechanics and this form of science, there has to be an audit. And it has to be done through debate, because it's not going to be done internally through the scientists. They're not going to do it socially. It's going to be too hard. They're not going to be brave enough to do it, okay? Because people will come at them. In my opinion, there's not going to be a lot. Socially, why would you do it, okay? First off, you're in a group of who's already looked at as the smart people, right? You're going to listen to Gary and Ricky and David Weck versus some PhD professors, thousands of PhD professors. Which one has the better models? To me, it's okay. Weck can move best at 50 years old. Ricky and Gary at Goda have amazing observations that haven't been done because they were outside the system. To me, I look at it now, I'm like, it was because they were outside the system that they were able to observe these things that academics couldn't, because they can only see things through their own lens. Okay. And I should say they was me at one point. I could only observe how the body moved through anatomy, through literally what they call cadaver anatomy. But really what it means is lever systems. Okay? Fascia, again, is not accounted for. So then when I start...
Well, and can you explain why fascia, like when you're doing a cadaver dissection, for a long time, they would just cut through the fascia and it would be like not looked at as a relevant thing for the cadaver dissection, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's still happening now as we speak. That's by far most of the academic world is still doing that. It's very hard to dissect fascia, and you have to use a textbook. Like, it's Netter. Everyone who has done anatomy a lot knows Netter, okay? And knows Grant. And these are the textbooks that you use, and they're all muscle-based. There's no mention of a fascia at all, really. It might be a aforementioned thing. Now, in academics, I know Stu McGill recognizes the glute to lat connection. They'll recognize that one. The fibers are going in the same direction. They're like, okay, it's obviously there. And the thoracolumbar fascia is going in the same direction. They recognize that those things are there, but when it comes time to evaluate numbers and forces, they're gone. They're not there anymore. It's levers again, right? So there is some acknowledgement of these, but not in the actual scientific realm. If I'm wrong about this, please let me know. Because
I mean, I was even reading, Bill Parisi's book. I think it's literally just called Fascial Training, and he talks about Stu McGill acknowledging fascia. And I was like, that's really strange, because all the interviews that I have of Stu that I've watched and the clips that we've pulled up, it doesn't seem like he's operating on any model that accounts for fascial forces at all. Even in his core work and in his observations of the spine, it's like there's no accounting for it. Or if there is, it's not something that's talked about because everyone's too focused on the other elements of it.
I've never heard him say it's always brace the core. It's never pressure wave or spinal movement from side to side, head over foot. Whatever academic term you want to put it, whatever way you want to put it, this fascia is elastic and you can use that force to your advantage through certain positions of your joints. It's that simple, okay? And I can go outside and I can do it right now. I don't need an academic paper to tell me. If I read the academic papers, I'm not going to find it. I can go outside and do it, though. I can observe it over and over and over again, thousands of times. I can show you exactly how to do it. But again, it's not mentioned. So it's almost this like elephant in the room, or the emperor isn't wearing any clothes. And it's funny because I ask a lot of people this question. I'm like, what's your opinion on spinal engine? I hear crickets, crickets, crickets. That is a question that never gets answered. It's because, why won't you answer it? Answer the question. Why won't you account for fascia? Why won't you account for the spinal engine?
I think like subconsciously they probably know that, because if it is correct, then they're going to have to make very broad adjustments to their model that they're currently operating on. It threatens their ground of truth that they've built for themselves, right? It's funny, I actually got a response from Lance Brookes on a comment that I made. David Weck posted this video of someone running head over foot. He was double amputee on his arms, and I think he might even have a prosthetic leg, but he's running head over foot. And so David was like, you should just drop a little comment there. So I tagged him and I said, do you think the spinal movement here is to compensate for lack of limb leverage, or is head over foot a recognized thing universally in human locomotion yet? He answered, and he said, the torso rotates more in this instance to compensate for lack of arm mass in order to maintain a net whole body angular momentum of 0. I'm actually going to pull up the video here for a second so that you can see.
That is a very interesting answer right there, because it shows so much. Let's see it. Okay.
So this is the video, right? I think he might have a prosthetic leg on one side, but he definitely has, again, missing the lower limbs on both arms. So, the torso rotates more in this instance to compensate for lack of arm mass in order to maintain a net whole body angular momentum of 0. Under normal circumstances, arm motion is the typical mechanism for counterbalancing the legs. Regarding the second half of your question, whether the head aligns vertically with the foot at the ground contact is neither disputed nor supported in the literature. I've seen examples of it both happening and not happening in high-level athletes. With as many factors as there are which determine running success, this one seems very low on the list, and yet And I've yet to hear even a slightly convincing / coherent justification for even worrying about it.
This is absolutely fantastic, actually. Okay, so let's take this sentence by sentence and break it down. Okay, so
Yeah.
the torso rotates more in this instance to compensate for lack of arm mass in order to maintain a net. Let's stop right there. Actually, compensate for lack of arm mass. Okay, so somewhat true in my opinion. Okay, now again, the model is very linear. They're like, okay, the torso rotates, and the arms are there to stop that rotation from being so heavy. Okay, they don't account for the arms being elastic, which, you know, David Weck says double down, because you can use the elasticity from your arm, which you see in every single long distance runner. Even if you slow down sprinters, they're using elastic, or they're using their arms like hammers to create an elastic tension. You can do this in boxing, you do this in running, you can do this pretty much anywhere, right? So David Weck calls it double down. You're doubling down your arms. They're both hitting down at the same time, so you can harness that energy to move to the other side, right? Now, again, he looks at it rotates more in this instance to compensate for lack of arm mass. So his idea, again, is that the arms stop the rotation of the body from moving so much. Stop the rotation. And again, there's no mention of circular motions, no mentions of spirals, no mention of spinal engine. None of those are mentioned. He is his
because he says it's not verified by the literature yet. So why would he bring it up?
Well, yeah, the assumptions. Let's talk about his assumptions, though. He's assuming that there's no circular motions of the body, that there's no spirals, that there's no head over foot, that there's no pressure wave in the body. Okay, even though I can see it in the video, if I just interpret it another way, right, which you can see in many different scenarios. Okay, so that was the first one. Can you see somewhere in that first sentence where he may have had some assumptions there?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Like, what would they be?
It's the maintaining a whole net body angular momentum of zero as
gobbledygook.
It's well, I guess it is gobbledygook, but you know, I'm trying to see his logic clearly, right? It's one of the assumptions is the role of arm mass in locomotion is this counter rotating force. It's I almost feel like everyone's measuring that Palov press strength, like how much can you resist rotation from all parts of your body, from your core, from your arms. It's this, he's trying to maintain a whole body angular momentum of zero.
So he's just using a calculation there. He's like, yeah, okay, I've calculated into my calculation that my professor gave me, okay, and every time, because the body, angular momentum, Newton's second law, is that the angular momentum of your body doesn't change if once you press the pressure off the ground, it has to stay the same, right? Or sorry, not stay the same, but equal zero, okay? So that's his lens right there. He's like, my calculation says that it has to be zero, so when I have when the arms are present, you may not see as much torso rotation, therefore, the arms not being present and there's more torso rotation, that means that it's there to cancel out the angular force.
Yeah,
which
that's
true,
that's
right?
his. Well, that's the assumption is under normal circumstances, arm motion is the typical mechanism for counterbalancing the legs. We would probably say it's not, right? Like that's not the typical mechanism for counter. What's the typical mechanism for counterbalancing the legs? Do the legs need counterbalancing, or with a rotary motion? Yeah, exactly.
Pressure wave, head over foot, landing on the proper side of your foot. Like, yeah, so counterbalancing the legs. What does that even mean? That means
okay. So this is does that mean that like you're counterbalancing the legs to keep the core more rigid? It's like because your legs are going off, you're veering your core off to the side too much. You're trying to counterbalance that rotation, that torque force through your core. Like, I'm not entirely sure. So you don't need to counterbalance your leg if you are landing in balance, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that's
take a look at me right now. If I'm here,
I'm gonna stop sharing for a sec so we can see you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, if I'm moving and my spine is straight, which they say in the pedestrian theory or the mainstream theories that the spine stays straight, it's supposed to stay rigid, then you can't account for the head moving back and forth, which doesn't happen every time because the person's off balance, okay? It happens when the person's in balance and they're smooth mover and they know what they're doing, okay? And children do it. People who are good athletes and are smooth do it. You can be a muscle-bound athlete and be use power to get you through, or you can be an efficient athlete like Michael Jordan, okay? So basically it's like this. Because they don't account for circular motions or spirals, the torso's rotating like this. And you see this in the one move explosive guy. Okay. You know what one move explosive guy is? Obviously, it's the guys on Instagram that like do the high box jump and then stand like this, right? Like,
yeah,
really,
the open finger karate chop.
Fingers, yeah, like that sort of thing that's taught to people right now. Okay. So they have no concept of a side bend. Okay. The spine stays vertical. So in order for you to counterbalance the forces at the legs, your torso has to rotate harder, and it has to rotate even harder when you have no arms. You get what I'm saying? To get that net force to zero. So it like, to me, this is just not correct, you know? But and he's going to be like, well, all the science says it is, so it's correct.
But I'd love to see the science that says it is. You know, I would reverse trace it back, and you know, like if we're serious about falsifying someone else's idea, we would go through and criticize the science and the I guess supportive data that supports the paradigm that he's operating from.
Well, he's supporting it here through equation that it has to get to zero. Okay, the angular force has to equal zero, because that's what Newton's law says. Okay, so he's like, how could this not be true? Because the forces have to equal zero. Now, when I account for forces in my equation, I'm going to plug in the numbers of the forces that I get from my force plate. So he'll go into a lab. He'll be like, okay, I counted, let's say 1,000 newtons. I'm just going to put a number out there. 1,000 newtons through the foot. So I'm going to make my calculation work with all the rotations of the body to equal that, right? So 1,000 newtons at the foot would have to cancel out throughout the whole body. So basically they're making up an equation. They're using a proper equation, which is Newton's law, right? Newton's second law, I believe, right off the top of my head. And they plug the numbers into the equation and you get the proper answer at the end, but it doesn't account for reality. It just makes the equation work. So they're like, in the heads, they're like, okay, the equation, we're going to plug the numbers in the equation according to the force that I get from my awesome computer machine, okay? And then I'm going to reify my own, reification means that I'm going to use my own model to prove my model. Exactly, right? So it's very interesting stuff here. And
so regarding the second half of your question, whether the head aligns vertically with the foot at ground contact is neither disputed nor supported in the literature. I've seen examples of it both happening and not happening in high-level athletes. With as many factors as there are, which determine...
Let's go with that, because that's very interesting there. Okay, regarding the second half of your question, whether the head aligns vertically with the foot and ground contact is neither disputed nor supported in the literature. That's interesting, because I'm pretty sure it's disputed in the literature, okay? Because you don't hear anybody ever saying it. I've never heard anybody in the academic world say that head over foot is probably... He's leaving himself open here to be correct in the future, okay? So I'm looking at this a little bit Machiavellian, to be honest, because I think that they operate, in particular, some of the research-based guys operate like this because they want to keep their model and they don't want to be wrong later. To me, I'm like, okay, I'm willing to be wrong here. I'm saying it's head over foot, and he uses he's like high-level athletes, which I mean is a subset group. Okay, doesn't prove anything in humans. It proves things in high-level athletes, like a race car versus a normal car. I shouldn't even use that analogy because that's not great. But basically, he's like, I've seen it both happening and not happening in high-level athletes. Yeah, you can keep. Nobody's saying you can't keep your spine straight. But it's going to cost you efficiency, and it's going to cost you 360 motion. If you were to run in or have to cut, you have to use head over foot. Okay, that's where it shines. Now, you can run a straight line and not go head over foot and be very, very rigid and quiet and still use a muscle-driven activity. And as long as you have the central nervous system power and the muscle power, You can go fast in a straight line, and then a guy like Lance Brookes will be like, hey, you know what? I'm proven right here because that fast 100-meter runner didn't go head over foot. So therefore, the model is correct. And then he sees another one that does go head over foot, and he's like, look, they both go head over foot, and one goes with the with not head over foot. So we can't know anything except that. Sorry, go ahead.
Just on that disputed nor supported point that we were talking about, and you're like, well, I here's the thing: is they don't outright. Like, there's probably not a paper that says spinal engine is an incorrect theory because the core stays rigid during locomotion. Like, there's probably no, study titled any iteration of that. But the broader assumptions, the nature of the paradigm that they're bringing forward itself, example, brace the core, mechanical lever motions of limbs, counter rotation, all of the, and that, like you said, that equation that you plug into a computer, all of that assumes that spinal engine isn't necessarily happening. It's definitely not accounted for, and it's almost like disputing through like deliberate omission, right? That's the way that I'm kind of seeing it. It's like the literature may not actively have papers refuting it outright and claiming to refute the theory and the model itself, but the model is sort of the dispute.
Yeah, well, I've never seen an academic. Please show me an academic outside Serge Gregakevsky who acknowledges head over foot. Because I've been looking and I can't find it, and I'm seeing opposite. I'm seeing all rigid core, brace the core, anti-rotation, pedestrian theory, which is what Weck calls it, but basically spine is a rigid column. Stu McGill says it's on guy wires, like a sail in a boat, okay? And it's holding rigid because he looks at lifters, because you have to do that when you're lifting. So he accounts for the forces there, and this is where it can get tricky. They'll be like, no, look what I said. I said, actually, it's like wiring, and you do have elastic forces pulling at each side. Yes, during a lift, it'll pull equally on both sides, or ideally pull equally on both sides and make the spine rigid in the middle, okay? They don't account for it. And again, please falsify my statement here. Use a Karl Popper / Black Swan. Show me one single academic doing it the other way, and I'll eat my words, other than Serge Gregakevsky, okay? So this is where it comes in with the social aspect of the science, okay? Because, again, he's leaving himself a window to be incorrect here, okay? Because he is incorrect, but he's leaving himself a window that, oh, actually, I said this, that it could be neither disputed or proved in the literature, so I was never wrong about it, right? But socially, they're pushing the other way, okay? Socially, they're all pushing the other way. They don't want to talk to me about it. And when I'm messaging, I message so many academics talking about spinal engine, I never get a reply. I talk about something else, I get a reply every time, okay? It is literally like
the Black Swan.
So a black swan, again, if I observe, and this was from England in the 1800s, okay? All swans were white that were in England. No one's ever seen a swan that wasn't white. So therefore, all swans are white. But inmates started going to Australia and saying, hey, we're seeing black swans here. So the statement or the idea that all swans are white no longer is the truth. Some swans are now black, so you falsified the statement that all swans are white, because there is black swans, and that is the black swan argument. If you can give one argument that shows up against a theory that it should be one particular way, then it's no longer that particular way every single time. Okay, so he's kind of acknowledging that here, that it's neither in the literature nor here nor there. The other thing I was about to say about this was that, it's socially, a lot of the times, like Gregakevsky, who came out with spinal engine, is like, look at this awesome model, spinal engine, we're observing it everywhere, here it is, and here's how it works, right? A lot of that was socially not, I always hear, Gregakevsky was disproven, spinal engine was disproven a long, long time ago, right? But then I go to try to find who disproved him, and I can't find it because it doesn't exist. Okay, there's no disproof for it, and he's even said it there. So, like, why are people telling me that it's been disproved when really it's socially that they don't want to go there. It's not scientifically.
And this is his last statement here. With as many factors as there are which determine running success, this one seems very low on the list, and I've yet to hear even a slightly convincing / coherent justification for even worrying about it. So this is kind of interesting, because that probably means that within the context of the data that he's pulling from, it's all variables that he's testing, and he might have gotten results from variables, but he's just saying this isn't a variable that I think is worth testing because there hasn't been other testing around it. There hasn't been other talk about it. There hasn't been other, validation of this model from within my model. So I'm not going to look at it.
Yeah. Can you pull that back up? I'm going to pick that paragraph apart there.
For sure. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do it. But I was happy. I did ask him after too. It's like, do you want to hop on the podcast? This was my follow-up question there, but I never got an answer from there. I was just happy to get an answer here. I
highly doubt it. I would love to debate you, Lance Brookes. Prove me wrong, make me look terrible. That's okay. If I'm wrong, I'm willing to admit it. But please come and debate me. Lance Brookes, I challenge you to do debate. Big debate coming up with Lance Brookes, although I don't think he's going to do it. Okay? Okay, many factors as there are to determine running success. So running success, what does success mean in running? Straight line as fast as you can, 100 meters. Is this, maybe that's his field, I don't know. 100-meter running or 60-meter running or 30-meter running in a straight line. Again, you could be successful any way you want. You could be, linebackers have an advantage at like 10 meters. You know what I mean? They're fast. But they're going to lose at 40 meters. And when they have to turn real fast, like a wide receiver, there's a reason why linebackers are not wide receivers. Okay? They're there to put their mass straight ahead as fast as possible. So do they have to go head over foot? Probably not. They should, but instead they can use their muscular power and their nervous system to drive them forward. Okay? So running success to me is being able to run freely, beautifully, elastically, to be able to move 360, and I can show you and prove it. Okay, that's the difference there. How you do this using your elastic tension. Okay, now again, running success means nothing in terms of, there's many different types of locomotion. He says running success, again, running 100 meters, running a marathon, running like a running back.
That pre-assumption thing again.
Exactly, right? This one seems low on the list. Okay, so
I wonder what would be high on the list for him. That'd be very interesting.
Force production. He's all force velocity curves. You know what I mean? Like force production, how to produce force into the ground efficiently. They're going to look at front side, backside mechanics because they always look from the side. It's all front side, backside mechanics. It's do you land on your heel or do you land on your toe? There's a lot of different factors, but they're not looking at it like a pressure wave, like a fluid movement through the whole body and a synchronicity of joints and fascia and muscles that accelerate those motions and decelerate them. They're looking at it like linear force production. I put you on a starting block. I have that hooked up to a computer. How many newtons did you put through that starting block? And that's kind of the area that they're going in, although I'm sure they do more than that. They do the 360 cameras or the 3D cameras, but they have to interpret the data differently. If they interpreted the data
through the lens.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have head over foot in the data on your 3D motions, because I went to the SMU lab in terms of like on their YouTube channel, and you can find head over foot in their 3D models, but they'll be like, okay, that's just one person, because he acknowledged it here. That's just one person doing head over foot. I can show you another person not doing head over foot. And again, my argument is the efficiency aspect of it, not that you can't do it. Okay? Where is it? This one seems down on the list because you've never measured. You don't understand spirals. Okay? So you don't understand how the arms spiral and how the motions. Watch long distance runners. Watch sprinters. They're hammering their arms down in order to gain more force. He's saying it's to control the actual rotation of the torso. Okay? But again, he doesn't account for a side bend. There's no accounting for a side bend. I'd like to see that in the literature. Okay? You can see it here as the guy's if you're on your the one foot, the torso bends a little bit. It may be a micro, it's going to match what the foot does for the most part. Very rare that someone goes way outside their foot. It does happen, right? And you can use elastic tension that way sometimes. But most people don't go that far. It's just a little bit of a motion with the spine. It seems low on the list again because he hasn't measured it and he doesn't understand it. And I know he did a study where they have their hands like this and they run 30 meters. So their hands behind their heads are like, we're going to take out the arms and we're going to run 30 meters. And there was only like a 3% difference in speed. Again, measuring speed, not efficiency, not ease, not elasticity, but speed. And they only decreased, I can't remember what it was. I think it was 3%. Negligible, means nothing. These arms are not important. I think possibly it was to spite David Weck, because David Weck has the shakers and talks about the arms, talks about the double down, talks about all those things. You will see really good athletes use a strategy with their arms. You think that, to me, it's absurd to think that it's very low on the list. And what is your list anyway? And what are priorities? So I can't argue with him because that's his subjective interpretation of where it is on the list. I think it's higher up to match what your arms are doing. And arms are connected to your shoulder, which to me is a part of an engine. Okay, if you use the spirals correctly, it's part of the engine, which is hooked up to the thoracic spine and hooked up to the ribs through your connective tissue, and you're harnessing all of them at once and following the energy. Okay, if your energy is going one way, you can't take a turn and go the other way abruptly. You have to let the energy flow and move in a circle. Again, if you want to see this, go to my Instagram. You'll see it everywhere. Okay, so can you pull that back up one more time?
Yep, for sure. And then we can even go to your Instagram and we can show people what you're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, follow Will at the Art of Move on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I've yet to hear even a slightly convincing or coherent justification for even worrying about it. That's the last sentence.
Yeah, so his worry is that it makes you slower. Okay, so because that's the force production angle of it, which is most biomechanics that I've seen is very much force production. Show me a spiral. Show me a pressure wave. Show me that you even understand that. Anywhere in the academic world, and they'll be like, "It doesn't exist. You're crazy." I'll be like, "Okay, let me show you. I can show you
hydraulics and elite."
Yeah. So coherent justification would be a paper. You know what I mean? For even worrying about it, he's going to be like, "Show me a paper where they show this." I can't show you a paper, so therefore it can be thrown out. Right? Observation is going to be key there, and actually being able to do it yourself is going to be key. That's all I got to say about that, right? But where were we going to go with this? We were talking about first principles, right? Yeah, you can go with any of these. And again, this is like a bow staff, and I'm expressing spirals, but it works every time in that. Take a look at the bow staff going in one direction. I can't abruptly move it in the other direction until I finish the spiral in my hand. And the spiral is really the motions like this. Okay? Pinky up if I'm overhand. If I'm underhand, it's pinky down. Okay? And in the foot, it's heel away for the most part. Okay? That's the spiral. It could be heel in, and you can have an opposite spiral, right? But it's not straight at all, right? And the reason I'm able to pull off these moves and make it look smooth is because I understand spirals, because I understand the head over foot, and because I understand that the spine is to be a elastic motion, okay, an elastic tool. If it bends on one side, I know I have tension on one side, and I know I'm compressed on the other side, and I can use it to my advantage. Take a look at Mike Tyson or any boxer. They're doing that. Any mixed martial artist will do that. If we're talking strict locomotion, it's done for the most part as well. Sprinting is a terrible example usually because everyone wants to appeal to sprinting, but in reality, sprinting is just one thing that most people don't do. If you're sprinting past the age of 20, you're probably either a professional athlete or you're 25. a professional athlete or you're really, really into it. Okay.
Yeah.
So nobody else is really doing it consistently. So this is really a conversation for debate, right? Between the academics and people who care.
I feel like there wouldn't be a huge reason for human beings to sprint a lot in any iteration of our past. You know what I mean? Like, other than like in terms of like a full out sprint that you would have in a race, like, yeah, maybe running away from a predator or, you know, but we're not apex predators in terms of like just sprinting after animals. There's even some theories that early hominids or early humans specifically, would endurance hunt their prey, you know, and they would just like, they had this capacity to do this slow rhythmic run and exhaust the animals that they were hunting. And that would be how they hunted. It was like, we're not these like, you know, explosive physical, we're not cheetahs. We're not like going after a gazelle at full speed, Mach speed, trying to outrun a gazelle. It's not as relevant to the human movement as we would think it is. Like, obviously forward locomotion is one of our primary patterns. However, the sprint, like you said, it shouldn't be used as a universal. I like that breakdown of your movement patterns, by the way. It's even like upgrading like in a major way with your stuff.
Yeah, it's getting better and better every day because I'm using these principles that I'm telling you, right? Can you go to another one? Let's see, maybe this one here. Yeah, okay, so I'm using the spiral nature of the body. I'm using that. And Lance, I'd like you to try this. He's going to be like, what does this have to do with sprinting? I don't get it. I know, okay? I know, because basically you're using spirals and the motions of your body to in sync. Get everything in sync, and the spiral, the energy, the rope shows you what is true, because at the end of the energy that I'm using, it has to go in a spiral or the ropes will hit each other. And you'll hit yourself. Okay? So the spiral dynamic has to be there. And I box a lot, so I know that this is the case. I showed a high-level martial artist this stuff, not this complicated, but a single rope. And he was getting it within an hour. He was like, oh, I really get this. And this guy's like high level. He trains heavyweight mixed martial artists in the UFC. Okay? I showed him this, and he understands it because he's not academic. He didn't have that cognition where there's blinders on in real life motion and actually showing what you're talking about, not just presenting a paper, a flight manual. Here's a flight manual, okay, versus somebody who's flown the plane 900 times, right? So yeah, there's a difference in these things. And I'm sure Lance is a good athlete, but I'm sure he's a very muscle-bound athlete. I don't know him at all, to be honest, but
I think he's an Olympic weightlifter, actually.
Okay, sweet. So Olympic weightlifting is very linear, right? Like, there's not much going on in terms of rotary motion. I've done enough Olympic weightlifting in CrossFit to know the technique. I obsessed about the technique for a long time. It's linear lifting, and that's what it is specifically. Okay, there's no accounting for spirals because you don't have to do it. Your hands are anchored to a barbell, and your feet are anchored to the ground. And when you jump, you're jumping backwards. Okay, and your feet are popping out like this. That's about as much spiral as you're getting. When you push through the ground, your legs will spiral out. You never see Olympic weightlifter spiral in like pigeon-toed.
No.
Okay, they always spiral out. And I'd love to see a counterexample of that. Maybe somebody very, very new, but the pro ones, the pro Olympic lifters all go out.
Yeah, toes turn out.
Exactly, right? And what do you think is going to code in when you run? Toes turn out. Okay, so basically,
that video that you
it's still a spiral.
I mean, you posted a video of Tia Claire Toomey a little bit ago of her run. She was running in slow motion, and I wish I had it just ready to go. But when she stepped down, when she like planted her foot, you saw as soon as she made ground contact, it was kind of crazy. Her toes would just snap out, as if she was like absorbing force in that way that she had practiced like over and over and over again.
Yeah,
I thought that was really interesting.
I didn't actually even analyze that one. I quickly shared it because I'm like, oh, CrossFit or sprinting, you never really see it that much, right? So I just threw it out there quickly, but I think I have it here, and I'll send it to you as soon as I find it, and then we can kind of analyze that. But either way, Olympic lifting spirals just when your feet come off the ground, and and that is just when you pull the weight up, right? You're basically jumping. So it's more of a jumping mechanic. And again, when like Michael Jordan jumps, you'll see the heels turn out. That's his spiral. Some people, like LeBron, they might turn in because that's his spiral. Both are possible. I believe the spiraling out is a much better mechanic in terms of how the energy is supposed to be moved. Okay? Or in my opinion, how the energy is moved. I don't want to get too far into that because that's a whole nother topic. But I believe the heel spiraling out when you're pushing running or jumping, to me, that's a better mechanic than heel spiraling in. But the point is, they're both spirals. Okay? And they both have to be accounted for. If you watch a sprinter and the foot leaves the ground, even I sent you a video of the fashion jogger doing this. When she steps and the foot comes off, you'll see the heel spiral out, but as the foot comes back towards the body, it spirals in a little bit. To me, that's the elastic tension at the end of the line, like you pull an elastic tight, okay, and it's spiraled. I'm going to grab an elastic here. The elastic spiraled like this, one direction, and then snaps back. And it might go a little bit in the other direction because it's snapping in a spiral, right? To me, that's very obviously what's happening. And I can deduce this from the mechanics of the actual fascia, looking at the properties of elastic tension or elastics. Okay, we know that it's made of elastin collagen. We know that it has a elastic property within your body. The counter argument, of course, is going to be that, well, we did a study where we pulled the fascia on a dead body. And they usually use the IT band or thoracolumbar fascia. We pulled it this much and it didn't stretch with thousands of pounds of force. Therefore, it's not elastic. And the other argument is, since fascia is everywhere, it's being trained no matter what you're doing anyway, because they don't recognize the spirals, right? So it's being trained no matter what because it's everywhere. So why are you thinking that you're training it in a certain way?
Well, okay, so this is interesting, right? This is a denial of of how you can actually have certain fibroblast adaptations to different stimulus within your fascial tissue. You can actually dehydrate your fascia a little bit more by training the elasticity, so it has more of that bounding effect. But again, like, where's the literature to prove this? Maybe there is. I haven't looked for it, actually.
I think
this is stuff that Bill Parisi talked about in his book, and it sounded like it was scientifically validated. This would be like Tom Myers is talking about this stuff, you know? But it's interesting because it's not wrong to say that everything trains your fascia, but it is wrong to say that all training stimulus are going to cause the exact same adaptation to your fascia. And that, you know, it's the specific adaptations to impose demands is still the first principle that we're all working from. We wouldn't deny that. Why would fascia behave differently than muscle or any other tissue that you're specifically adapting to? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, they have different properties, right? And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that the fascia, and there's studies for this. I believe Ross and Bereznik, were PhD biomechanists in my school, CMCC, Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College. They were actually PhD biomechanists and chiropractors who did studies on fascial sliding, and they're like, oh, when you stretch, actually you're stretching your fascia, not so much the muscle inside, right? That should have been my first clue at school. Okay. Now I've heard Greg Lehman, and this kind of brings on another topic. Greg Lehman, who is very, I guess, famous and looked highly upon amongst the research-based crowd that we're kind of butting heads with. Anything that he puts out, they love, right? So I heard him say that he went to the same school as me, and he's like, oh, Ross and Bereznik were very good. And actually, it seems like CMCC, the school I went to, was very ahead of most schools in terms of being research-based. So,
because Andrea Spina went to that school too, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And so did Sean Thistle, and a lot of it's actually a research-based school. And again, I came from a research-based first principle in that's what I thought was the best information. Okay, so I came from that school of thought. Now, I've heard that other schools were not as research-based. So when they go through, like, let's say, for instance, spinal adjustments. Okay, a lot of people are going against spinal adjustments now because there was the original hypothesis that it increased your innate intelligence, and you had things called subluxations, which I don't actually myself personally, I don't know what they are. Okay, as a chiro, I don't know what they are, because my school was like, yeah, they're not really a thing. Okay, because the research says they're not a thing. So I assumed for the longest time they weren't a thing, and I still make that assumption now. I'm gonna bring someone on to counter my thought, to go the other direction and say actually they are a thing, and hear what they have to say. And this is what other academics don't do. They won't talk to the people who say the opposite things. Okay, they only talk amongst each other and reify the theses that they have already and they can only observe in that way. And I'm talking very generally. I'm sure there's 1% to 2% that go the other way and are brave and all that to do it, right? So that reminds me of Peter O'Sullivan, I believe he is, and I mentioned him a while back about a study that he sat on for years because it would go against the grain, and you're so brave for doing it. It's like, wow, that's where we're at now. Is the being brave is going against, obviously, I guess you can say, not very tight research. You know what I mean? That's brave in this world that we're living in. That's brave now. Okay, so to me, that's kind of absurd. It should be, you should want your hypothesis falsified. You should invite it instead of censoring it. You should be like, go ahead and falsify my hypothesis here. Let's debate it, because I think it's so correct that it can't be falsified. And if you can show me how it's falsified, then maybe it's not so correct, right? But that's not what's happening. It's like, let's keep this within our structure. And
because you're assuming that's an assumption that truth should be the highest principle, and that you should be operating based on truth first and foremost, right? And that's not necessarily the principal mode. Like you said, there's the social factors, there is the prestige, there is the ego involved in your reputation. There's all kinds of shit that's intertwined, and probably, whether consciously or subconsciously, takes a supersedence over the desire to seek truth. Then you get into issues where it's like, no one's going to invite falsification of an idea that you discovered that is now tied to your name and your reputation. It's not something that is openly welcomed. I'm sure that, like, I don't know scientists personally. I don't know what happens within academic structures. I hear stories, I hear firsthand accounts, I hear theories, and I see the fruits of what happens behind it, right? And this resistance to accepting new information outside of a current paradigm. I think there's a little bit that's lacking in terms of, there's some cognitive blind spots. Everyone has cognitive blind spots. You could probably go through any one of our episodes and pick us the fuck apart, like easily. But
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, no, like, here's the thing. I don't mind being wrong. That's like, that should be like an ethos or a way to live. It's like, I put my idea out there and let's get that idea challenged. And if it isn't right, let's move on to the next. And I don't think that, and I'm generalizing, a scientist or somebody, with credentials, a PhD or a high up researcher, I don't think they would say that they're not trying to find the truth. I think they would say they're trying to find the truth. That would be my observation / thesis of what they would say, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I think everyone would say they're trying to find the truth, but if you're trying to find the truth, then you should be inviting people to falsify your claims. You shouldn't be inviting debate, but there's none of that going on, or very little of that going on. Actually, I see some research-based physios actually debating. A great channel is Jared Powell, okay? And they have debates on there, and it's more debating amongst research-based clinicians in different camps, okay? It's not so much like us who are looking at a niche that's outside the scientific paradigm, because, again, my first principles do not come from scientific papers. They did originally, and through time and experience, it came outside that paradigm, and now I'm jumping back into the research-based paradigm to see what I missed in the last 5 years since I kind of dumped it. Okay, I'm like, I'm going to dump this and actually move. And that's basically the time I quit CrossFit and started looking into functional patterns, Of course, I thought Naudi was crazy. I was the
I
guy.
did too.
He
Like,
kicked
we
me
both
out.
did.
I was the guy
Yeah.
who was like, "This is crap." Like, Naudi, how could you say this stuff? You know, like there was a video of Camille LeBlanc-Bazinet doing butterfly pull-ups, and he's just like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen." Right? Like, in terms of mechanics, it's like you really want to repetitively just butterfly pull-up. If you don't know what that is, Google butterfly pull-ups or YouTube it, and he's just like, how is this a good idea with mechanics? It's like, it has nothing to do with the body. It's just going for output sakes, right? So the most output, the most energy output, the most efficiency, which CrossFit defines efficiency as being able to do something over and over and over again and still be able to do it, then do something else, right? So I was like, it's efficient that way. So my explanation was, it's efficient that way. And she just made $100,000 or whatever, 500 grand winning the CrossFit Games. So therefore, it's a good thing, right? Like, she just made 500 grand off this in one go. So that was my justification for it, right? It's both mechanically efficient with what she needs to do to win the CrossFit Games and to do the butterfly pull-up, and it got her 500 grand. So where's the inefficiency here? But I wasn't looking at it in gait mechanics. I wasn't looking at it in synchronicities of movements. I wasn't looking at it what's you doing to your body. Where are the compressions? Where are the tensions? Where are the what is this doing to your joints? Do you really ever need to do this? Like, those questions went through my head when I initially saw it. I was just thinking the lens that I had, you know. So, yeah.
Well, and that's why Naudi's the OG, man. Like, he's the pioneer who was face down in the dirt with all the arrows in his back. He went through all the shit, you know, like, including from you. You know, you were like, you gave him shit too. I remember watching it, and he was, you know, like, his original marketing campaign on YouTube was smack talking CrossFit. It's like, this isn't CrossFit. This is like real functional fitness kind of thing. Yeah. I was like, it did get me to think, you know, not profoundly, because I was still pretty entrenched in like wanting to be jacked and lift weights and, you know, be a high level CrossFit athlete for my age and whatever. But down the line, you like, once that seed is planted and you start living in your body more and the other stuff stops working, you know, you're like, in the back of your head, you're like, okay, maybe there is actually some truth. There's a grain of truth that there's obviously a reason this person came to this conclusion. And I feel like I'm experiencing those reasons right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's very interesting because it's really an evolution of your first principles, right? So again, my first principles right off the get-go, I learned them from going through university and going through Cairo school. And to be honest, like, the research, I've heard the argument, we should start with the science and then move from there. And again, I never see people moving on from there. There's always a research-based paper to make your first principle. However, when you start to actually play with movement, and play is a big word, you start to actually have to do movement. And it's like, wait, maybe Weck is correct here because I can actually apply what he's saying right away. And that's another thing. It's like, do you need to coach one person to the other? Why do you need research? Okay, maybe clinicians do. Okay, clinicians, because we have a like legal obligation, and you know, they would say social obligation and moral obligation and obligations to your to the profession to do it a certain way. Okay, but one coach to the other, like a go-to coach to a you know, a regular person in public, why do they have to go with the research in the first place? And how do they know the research? How does a regular person get hold of the research? Because it's very gate kept. You try to go on PubMed to research a paper. If you don't know what you're doing, it's going to take hours to look at one paper, and it's probably going to be $150 to even get the paper. You know, most of them aren't free. It's a for-profit service a lot of the time. Some of them are free, and some of them are like, you know, 48 hours for $50 or something like that, which is insanely expensive. Okay, so, and you won't really understand what to look for in the first place. So you socially have to count on somebody else to tell you the info. So you're already doing that in the first place. So let's say a go-to coach or getting coached from Weck or Chris Chamberlain, they know how to move their bodies. They can teach you how to move your body much better than any PhD scientist, I'm not going to say any, many PhD scientists who are just looking at the research and not applying it. Okay, so human to human interaction, again, wins out to me. It's, can I teach you in fundamentally, forget about science, forget about all these structures that have come up. If I'm a caveman and I go to another cave, I can move, the other caveman can't. Let me teach you how to do it. Let me show you. You know, like, let me physically show you. I'm going to show you and you copy, right? It's literally that see, feel. I love how Goda says that. See, feel, right? So see it, feel it, move on. Maybe once you learn how to move in your actual own body, learn how to use the avatar, you can see if it's validated by science, right? Through, again, you won't be able to do it by looking yourself because you're not going to have that knowledge if you're not a scientist or someone really into looking at research. So you're going to have to socially trust somebody in the first place. And that trust right now in the public goes to science and PhDs, but that's eroding quickly. Again, because of the, where I think we're in a crisis, because there's been too many falsified in reality things that I've seen within the realm of science, that trust has gone down. So when trust goes down, you're going to get alternative people coming up, and no matter what you want, if I'm not here, it's still going to happen. If it's going to happen no matter what. Okay, so if you want to save science's credibility and you're a scientist, be more open to debate. Audit yourself. Audit your first principles. And again, we didn't even get to first principles, but I think that's what is needed. Again, back to the thesis.
So I want to relay an experiential sort of thing around understanding things and understanding truth, understanding data. Have you ever had the experience where you're learning about something and then you have a life experience, or you have like a certain level of proficiency in practice where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I get it. And I realized I'd never got it before because I didn't experience it yet. Now that I've experienced it, all the other information, it like you may have had like a model of how it looked to you before because you had taken in the information, you had all of the logistics and all of the data and all the stuff, and so you could visualize it really well. But then you have an experience of that thing that you studied, and all of a sudden your old model doesn't even make sense anymore. All of a sudden you have the whole picture of everything that everyone's ever talked. Like I had that experience with Goda where I intellectually understood it. I kind of felt the math a little bit, but then one day I was out for a run and there was this like recoil, and I felt that I literally felt the angles. I was like, oh my God, I feel the math. I feel like a hippy, dippy, whatever, but like it's real. You know, when they're like recode is real, it's like you have the experience. You're like, oh my God, that's crazy. That's so cool. That's so efficient. Had the same thing with yoga when I was meditating. Had my moment of ego death. And then from there on, all the scriptures that I had read about the control and the nature of the mind in the Yoga Sutras, all of a sudden, it's like I had intellectualized it. All of a sudden, it actually made sense. I could actually say that I understood it because I'd had the experience that put the whole puzzle together. I think that moment, that experiential moment, is missing for most people who are looking at data and using papers to basically justify the reality and their model of reality that they have.
Yeah, experience literally doesn't mean that much to a person in that paradigm. It's like, yeah, experience is nice. That person had an experience over there. He had a different experience. He had an experience that's different than yours over there. So experience means nothing, or experience means nothing. It's like, I mean, I can see that argument, right? Because every single person is going to have an experience. Some people can lie and say they had an experience. You know, how do I validate that experience? But who owns the experience? Only you can own experience. Only you can be the consciousness that owns that experience. And if it's true for you, then it's true, right? Like in your own experience, right? So when you're saying with Goda, I had the same type of thing, right? Like I'm running, and I had, what was I doing first? I'm going to go back and actually say, first with functional patterns, when I got out of CrossFit, I started doing some dance. I'm like, yeah, it was good. I liked it, but I started doing functional patterns in the sling systems. And again, Stu McGill says, you know, the lat to glute is a sling, but doesn't account for all the other ones. Now, the other side of the spectrum, Tom Myers is like, there's particular lines of tension. Maybe not. I don't know, right? But I can use different parts of my body to gain tension. So I take the hips and the ribs. This is the first thing I really discovered where I had that aha moment, right? When I'm swinging a mace bell, like Functional Patterns does, and I was able to isolate my ribs and then reintegrate the hip to counter rotate that and use the elasticity from my officially approved Stu McGill sling in the back. And I was able to use that as an elastic recoil. I'm like, whoa, what is this? Because I was linear lifting for so long. I felt that experience there, and I understood what Naudi was saying. I didn't really know functional patterns deeply, but I used the sling concept that he had, and I started playing with it because I knew the cadaver anatomy very, very, very well. Much better than, I'm going to say, 99% of the people out there. By the way, chiropractic anatomy is top tier. I would say better than medical anatomy, better than physio. It's cadaver for 2 years straight, where you're dissecting a cadaver, and I did 1 year in university. So it's 3 years of cadaver anatomy, plus thousands of, must have totaled 1,000 hours of anatomy class. Okay, so
that's wild.
It is wild. And I never learned about fascia, and I never learned about the connections. I never learned about elasticity. It was all levers, right? So it made sense with bodybuilding, lifting, all that made sense. The models worked out. Everything was completely fine. You go out for a run and it doesn't feel right. You know, like I go out and I'm cutting and moving, and I don't feel athletic anymore. What's going on? Okay, so then I found WEC probably 4 years ago, and it was literally the original head over foot video that he has on YouTube. Type in David WEC head over foot, and it's a green line with his head over it. Okay, so I watched that. I'm like, head over foot. And I remember reading about Greg Akevsky in Chiro School. Okay, because a lot of people in Chiro School were very curious. So there was some good stuff. There was some good alternative stuff floating around, but it wasn't taught as a core academic thesis, right? It was more, it was out there and people were looking at it, right? So I'm like, okay, spinal engine. I remember reading about that, head over foot. I'm going to go out and try it. I started doing head over foot for a while, and I'm like, man, this feels so amazing. How could this be possible that I've never felt this before in my life? You know, like, this is crazy to me. Then I started realizing, oh, this applies in boxing perfectly. And then I started playing with it in boxing and balancing. I'm like, oh, I can get more power if I have my head here versus the other foot, right? And then I start playing with that, and I'm like, oh, I can switch my feet. So I can quickly have let's say my head's over my left foot. I can quickly skip and have my right foot be over my head in one maneuver, and now I have my power in my right hand, right? So it's like, I started using it in reality. I'm like, this is working in reality. Does not match what my academic world is saying, but you know what? It's okay, because at the time I didn't even know there was a dispute. I didn't even understand how the models didn't work. Right, so I was just like, head over foot's the shit, right? I'm like starting to sprint to work now. It doesn't hurt anymore. It feels great. Double down pulse. I started doing that. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And then I start looking at the spinal engine a little bit more deeply. I'm like, oh, this goes way against what we're learning right now, what everybody's learning. Stu McGill fan. I was a massive Stu McGill fan back at school, and I started seeing that they weren't matching up. Right, so I'm like, oh, where's Stu going wrong here? I started watching more Stu McGill, and I'm like, he's looking at everything through lifting and strength. And he does have rehab type of programs. We should get into this, how he does his rehab, because I'm very, very interested in that. But that's a whole nother topic. So basically, he looks at it through lifting, lens, strength, and what they're missing is pressure throughout the body being in synchronicity. Goda calls it pressure wave. I don't know if WEC has a name for it. He just says head over foot and coil, right? So he tries to simplify the actual cues so that you can use it right away. Right? So I love that about it, because I could use it right away, right? And then using the ropes, I'm like, oh, head over foot. Once you use the ropes head over foot and you start understanding how the body moves from side to side, I could start coding this into my body through behavior repetition. And then my muscles and my fascia start to integrate into that system. And then I found Goda afterwards. And then I saw the pressure, like I saw the concept of a bow and corner. And that made so much sense to me. You know, like if I'm landing like this in this bow versus this that's not a bow, the athletes that move the smoothest, a lot of the elderly people that you'll see in the track and field championships, the indigenous and the kids, they're all creating these nice structures that GOAT has identified that are outside the academic world. Okay. And let's test this out. Let's see if it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I have done that. Like, we were like, the spirit of inquisitiveness, perhaps, just like, does this work? When you taught me the ropes and that head over foot, that was when I first started to train that reciprocal wave back and forth. And now when I'm running, it's like, there's this, I was talking to David, like, I think just yesterday, and I was like, it feels like I have a whole new body. Like, I feel like there is this efficiency and smoothness and bounce to it that it's never had. And it's because I'm transferring energy every step. I'm aware of my fascial tensions. Even when I'm doing push-ups right now, I'm doing that 300 push-ups a day for 100 days thing with Tyler. And every time I'm doing it, like, I can harness the fascial recoil by adjusting my shoulders and making sure the tensions in my chest are right. And so I have that elastic sort of quality that's happening when I'm throwing my arms back in locomotion, right? So I'm training that elastic quality because I want my pecs to have an elastic quality more than a stiff, rigid muscular quality. Because when I'm running, I want to have that nice recoil, that smooth articulation when I'm running. So even though I'm doing 300 push-ups, I'm trying to do them in a way that doesn't hurt my locomotion.
Yeah. Like, it's the $1 million question. How do you keep lifting and still maintain the good pressure wave? To maintain,
I think someone asks me that once a week. I get a DM once a week at least. Yeah.
Everybody wants to keep lifting because culturally that's where we all came from. You think I wanted to quit lifting? Like, not really. I wanted to quit lifting heavy because it was just wearing down on my nervous system. I was just at the point where lifting, trying to go for higher and higher numbers. I was weighing like less than 170 and squatting almost 500 and deadlifting close to the same. You know what I mean? That takes a toll on compression on a small boned individual, right? Like, and what do I get for it? I walk around like a beefcake and I'm jacked and and everyone's like, whoa, you're muscular. I'm like, whoa, sweet. You get those compliments, you get those like,
whoa, sweet.
the admiration from the men. And you think that women are looking at you and care. They don't, by the way, not really that much. Right. Like, and that's a generalization, right? But men admire you and women are supposed to admire you, but it's very low on the list, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, but we don't think that from a young age because that is the consumer end of it. The consumer end of it is that sex appeal wins at the end of the day. Yeah. Right? Like,
you want to be fucking Goku.
You'll see it in shows, videos. Who's the Abercrombie model? It's not going to be a guy who moves well. It's going to be the ab guy. Okay? It's going to be the jack guy. It's going to be... It really goes to that level. And then bodybuilding is another level of it where it's like you're getting admiration from mostly men who are like, you look like a statue. You're a Greek god. Right? And there's that ego behind it where it's like... and I'm talking on the extreme end of bodybuilding because there's people who grew up non-athletic, were getting made fun of on the other direction for being too skinny, right? And they're like, they want to at least get to that level where they're not socially being looked at in a particular way. Because when I stopped bodybuilding, people were like, you got skinny. You're so skinny now. What's wrong with you? Right? Like things like that, where it's like, you think this is a problem? Have you seen me move? It's like, but it still is, because that's all that people see is the shell, where it's like you're outside, you're walking around, and now you're skinnier. So I can see the end of it, where you want to get to a baseline where you're healthy and you look good. Okay, aesthetics are always going to be there. So the $1 million question is, how do we amalgamate these things? I think WEC has a great idea, the coiling, the movement of weight in the coil to get closer to locomotion mechanic. I think Naughty has it right, where you're gaining tensions and you're expressing those tensions, although and it seems like he's getting people more jacked now, which is cool, because he knows that patterns. He has to fix the aesthetic as well, right? Like, I'm sure he's aware.
Well, and that's a part of his thing, is like there's a geometry that looks attractive, And then from within that geometry, you build functional muscle on top of that, and you have a great aesthetic, which is like true. It's very true. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I have been teetering on the fence of doing a lot more calisthenic stuff. I'm doing all these push-ups, but my body, in terms of like the training, when I was focused on training, when I focused on calisthenics, my body always felt and performed its best. And there are elders, one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot is like, what do the elders of these movement practices look like? You look at elder bodybuilders like Ronnie Coleman in a fucking wheelchair. You look at some of these people who are like late into their 50s, 60s, 70s even, and they're just wrecks, like their bodies are totally wrecked. Now,
Tom Platz will be the counterexample that everyone uses for that.
Yeah, of course, Tom Platz is still killing it, right? But you know, how many videos online of these like 70-year-old men doing calisthenics at a beach or at a playground, for example, can you find all these people with like extreme longevity in their athletic ability? Calisthenics seems like it's a pretty good thing. Maybe it's something to do with the brachiation of, some of these bar skills and ring skills. Maybe it's something to do with, hitting from multiple angles and stabilizers. Who the hell knows, right? But it seems that maybe it's just not wearing down your tissues with an external load, like maybe it's, like you're not destroying your nervous system and your joints and your tissues as much because of the load. While you can have an extreme load in like an advanced skill like a planche or the amount of tension that you require to hold yourself in these poor favorable levers are they require a ton of tension. But even that level of tension, like you can definitely injure yourself doing calisthenics, but it's not as wear and tear on your joints, it feels like, as doing some of the heavier weightlifting stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one. In the calisthenics world, it's like you're not doing a lot of, when you're really into calisthenics, usually you'll drop running long distances or, your other activities. I don't know, right? But I know when I did calisthenics, which I did for a long time, gymnastics, calisthenics, I haven't done it forever, which would be interesting to kind of go back to and experiment, which maybe I'll do that. I don't know. I want to somewhat do it, right? Because I found that to be some of the most fun activity there was. Right? Like when I went to Venice Beach and I'd go there to visit my buddy, and just being there with a bunch of people just swinging around is like, it was amazing. Right? Like
it's a blast, right?
It's a blast. It's really, really fun. Right? And I think you're right. There is a lot of elders in calisthenics, so that's great. I love to see that. Bodybuilding, there isn't that many. Powerlifting, almost non-existent. I mean, can you think of an older powerlifter? Like really old? Ed Cohen, does he still lift?
I don't know if he still lifts, but let's see what's Ed Cohen up to.
But like, can you think of one power lifter that's old, like really old?
He's 59 right now.
Yeah, that still kills it, or
I don't know.
I'm sure they exist, but there isn't a ton of them, right? And usually they'll just do powerlifting, because everyone knows that, like, if you're a power lifter, for me, I wouldn't even walk up the local mountain in Banff because I didn't want to wear down my legs for the powerlifting workout. Because I had to count for that.
Yes.
Because I was getting so close to my maxes that, when you do a few programs where you're doing a West Side Barbell program, and then I got into, who was it, Juggernaut and Chad Wesley Smith, whoever he was, I think it was Juggernaut. I would do their programs, the Cube Method. You're getting closer to your maxes, like your potential, your genetic potential. So then you have to tweak so many things, and you start to get worried about, like, I can't even go for a walk right now. First of all, my blood's going to fill in my legs. And second of all, it's going to wear me down for the workout later. So everything would be catered around working out, which would be like a warm-up, heavy weights, 5-minute rest between, another set of heavy weights, and I would do that, be in the gym for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I'd go home and recover. You know what I mean? So
I think one of the, do you know who Mike Menser is?
Yes.
He, like the bodybuilder who kind of was like, existed at the same time as Arnold, and he has this high intensity training thing, right? So there was this online subgroup of people that were like all, Mike Menser style HIIT trainers, and they had this ongoing joke of a gym squire. It's like you don't even like bring your water bottle to your mouth. You just literally, it's like all your energy is going towards these like one set to failure, and it's maximum intensity. Then you have a gym squire to wheel you out of the gym and like carry your bag and stuff. I was like,
that's pretty hilarious. Like a caddy for your, like, bring me the weight
exactly
over here.
Yeah.
Go lift those 150s, put them at my feet, because I don't want to waste that energy going from the rack to over here, right? Like that's pretty hilarious, right? But actually, that's kind of what it's like at the competitive, or I never competed in it, but I would say I was competitive with myself with it, like very
definitely.
I'd be doing, if you're doing programming and you're lifting heavy weight, it's probably competitive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and Olympic lifting is kind of the same thing. I find Olympic lifting a little bit more quote unquote functional, and I'll define that, where you're lifting. Okay, so you're still lifting linearly and you're still moving backwards as you're lifting, but you have to coordinate a lot more. You have to have a moment where you're relaxed, meaning that like you're getting under the bar. So you've lifted as heavy as you could with speed, then you have to relax your body, get under the bar, and then tension again. And that's happening in a split second. I can see that being a similar way that an athlete would use their nervous system in a sport. So I can see kind of like the carryover there. And a lot of the times when you're lifting overhead, you do have that nice curve in your back, and then you're like, you don't completely close the angle on your hip thrust as you're doing it, except on in the cleans you usually do. Right?
Yep.
But like the overhead, you're usually not locking out your hips, and the snatch is kind of the same thing. You do kind of thrust forward, but again, you got to get back. You got to get your hips back fast, and that's an athletic trait, right? To get your hips back quickly. So and to catch
what were your maxes when you were doing Olympic lifting, when you were into CrossFit?
So I think it was around 225 for snatch. For clean, what was I cleaning? I couldn't press that much. I could almost so my shoulders were so stiff that I almost had a better.
You had that overhead position issue, right?
I had a better strict press than I did a catching.
Than a jerk.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Because I didn't trust my shoulders. They would always be sore, right? But if I could go slow, I can do it. So I could slow press. I don't even know the names anymore. I've been out of it for so long.
Like a military press.
Military press, 225. Okay, and I can overhead squat. I could overhead squat almost 315. Okay, because I can lock it out and hold it there. But as soon as I had to do it with speed, it would go to shit. Because it would, So, and the clean, I never cleaned over 300 pounds. So, it would be around those numbers.
Sweet. That's awesome.
But I didn't get the press. I only got the clean.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the pressing was definitely like an issue for CrossFit, like competitive wise. Like I went to a few competitions. I would always just do the powerlifting. I'd do the partner stuff, and I would do the squatting. I would do the deadlifting. I would do I remember one of the challenges one time was you have a certain amount of time, 2 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that, and you have to go ground to overhead as many times as possible, but you can put any weight you want on. So some people were doing, exactly, right? So it's a total amount lifted, right?
Oh, shit.
Yes, in a certain period of time. So I looked around and I'm like, everyone's putting heavy weight on, strong guys everywhere, right? And I'm like, let's put 95 on and rip it, right? To my partner. And that's what we did, right? Just 95, ripping as fast as
that you
could.
And Chris?
Yeah, and we won, right? So it's like, the guys that were lifting 185 or whatever and thinking that would get them a higher total, at the end it didn't actually even work out with like that. So it was pretty interesting stuff, right? Like the competition,
so much strategy involved in CrossFit. Like people don't realize how much like especially when people are getting creative with the event. I love CrossFit for that, man. The creativity of the events, like it's always a fun, interesting sport to participate in or watch.
Yeah, no, there is a lot of nuance to CrossFit, and CrossFit boxes, which is what they call a gym. The
gyms, yeah.
They are the most, like, from just my perspective of going to many different ones, they're the gym, or I should say the fitness style that has the most emphasis on actual mechanics. Like, I used to follow Kelly Starrett to the T and listen to everything he had to say. During the CrossFit Open, you used to have 4 or 5 weeks. I can't remember. I think it's 5 weeks. One workout a week, and you would get that workout 3 or 4 days in advance, and Kelly Starrett would come on and tell you how to do it the most efficient, right? That's just an example, but I would watch every Kelly Starrett video. I would watch every powerlifting video available on the internet at that time, which was, 7 years ago. So there was still some stuff, some good stuff, but not as nearly as much as there is now. And I would try to perfect everything. Slow motion. I used slow motion at that time. And again, there's that argument. It's like, we use slow motion too. No, not like Goda does. Goda is very unique in how they use slow motion. I would love to debate that too, because it is very, very unique the way that they use slow motion to analyze their running mechanic. Okay, but back to the original thing that I was saying. I'd watch slow motion. I'd try to perfect it. I'd try to perfect my pull, my tensions, my speed. Everything was accounted for. So many variables were accounted for. And I noticed that, like, when I went to different boxes, people were doing the same thing and trying to figure things out. So there's a very good culture of improvement in CrossFit, being better than the next day, not only physically and competitive wise, but to get better mechanics. So I think CrossFit's ripe for a change in how they kind of look at things. This is just my opinion on it, is how I think they could jump into something like a WEC method or a GOTA or functional patterns fairly easily. Because, sorry, go ahead.
David Weck is actually going on Kelly Starrett's podcast today. They're having a conversation, and they're going to be trying to integrate some ideas. So we'll keep an eye out for that one as well.
Unreal. I love it. Okay, because I want to see this niche bloom and blossom. And so I think there's so much gold in this alternative biomechanics niche that is untapped, and people are just waiting to get this information. And it's very easily shared. This information is so easily shared, again, because it's not gatekept that much anyway. There's always some internal politics going on, but it's not like getting information from a clinic or a clinician, like a physio or chiropractor or like a, somebody with a medical credential who has to verify through science. The information doesn't flow that fast. Feel is this niche, and then that's the barrier, right? Just you actually doing it is the barrier, and getting somebody who knows what they're doing. Again, hire a GOTA coach, hire a WEC method coach. Awesome stuff. They go together, guys. You could do both, right? Figure out what you want, and how you feel when you're doing it is a good indication of. I shouldn't say that, because feel isn't everything, because you can feel different sensations. I shouldn't say that, but like, I would experiment with both methods. I would experiment with a little bit of functional patterns. 10-week course is a good place to start, where you're understanding fascia. WEC to me is the easiest place to start, with just head over foot, using the ropes, using the coils of your ribs and your spine to harness energy. And with GOTA, it's a little bit more specific with how the energy flows through your body. Okay, so I think they all go together personally. And there's other systems popping up like OKF, and could you think of any others? Smaller systems that are just popping up right now that have some good gravy, some good movement info.
I mean, MoveMed, like Nathan at MoveMed. We got obviously Pat Cochran, who we interviewed, has kind of his own, like, he's doing functional patterns kind of, but it's his own iteration, it's his own gate model, it's his own application. So there's a lot of people who are out there, doing their thing and doing, making observations that are outside of the realm of the way that people want to gatekeep your observations, and from those observations are creating methods that are producing results, and that's significant to me. And absolutely. On that note, let's wrap it up there, just because we're already somehow an hour 45, if you can believe that.
Wow.
It's been we're really enjoying these episodes right now, guys. And if you're watching on YouTube, we always love seeing the comments in the YouTube section. We're making episodes where we're answering YouTube comments. And if not full episodes, then I've been making more videos. Will's going to be making some videos. We're going to have a ton of great content up there. So leave a comment. If you have an idea, you have a question, you have something, we will answer your questions pretty much always. We will, engage in conversations. Lance Brookes, Will called you out today. So if you want
Lance
to,
Brookes, please. I don't mind being wrong. If anyone wants to, call out respectably, semi-respectably to me, and say that, sorry about that, and okay. And say I was wrong about something, that is fine. Tell me, and I'll take it into account and learn. I'm sure I'll learn from it. You can learn from anything, even the opposite opinion.
And that's why we're doing this, guys. We're trying to have a good conversation. We're trying to find the grand unified theory of human movement, biomechanics, and functional training, which we can't get to unless we're having debates, and we're getting closer to the truth. So thank you so much for listening, guys. You can follow me at The Body Moves on Instagram. Will is at The Art of Move. We'll catch you on the next episode live on nofilter.net for the Art of Move podcast. Thanks for listening.
Have a good one, guys.